The envelope came without a return address, embossed with the Whitlock crest, a sapphire W coiled like a serpent. Ava Kingsley stared at it for a full minute before opening it, her hands still smelling faintly of bleach from the clinic job. Inside, "You are cordially invited to the Whitlock Centennial Gala. Formal attire required." She almost laughed. The same family that fired her mother for breaking a vase now wanted her at their celebration. Or maybe they didn't know. Maybe it was a mistake. But the seal was real. And the date was tonight. She stood before her cracked bathroom mirror, steam ghosting the edges, the invitation balanced on the sink. Her reflection looked composed, but the muscle under her jaw pulsed like a clock. She buttoned the thrifted dress, the one that almost fit, and tucked a velvet box inside her coat pocket. The ring inside was cool. Heavy, her father's ring, the only proof that the Whitlocks had stolen more than wages. Outside, the night smelled of citrus and rain. By the time she reached the Whitlock estate, the sky had gone black-blue, the kind that swallowed sound. Cars idled along the drive. Valets, in black gloves, opened doors with mechanical precision. She could still recall the rhythm, "Ma'am, please step this way," the cadence of servitude. At the entrance, a woman with a headset stopped her. "Catering's through the side. I'm a guest," Ava said, her tone even, her back straight. The woman blinked. "Oh, my mistake." Inside, chandeliers threw fractured light across the ballroom. Gold, glass, and gossip everywhere. The air hummed with perfume, champagne, and the kind of laughter that always sounds rehearsed. At the far end, a string quartet played something elegant and forgettable. And there he was, Graham Whitlock, silver hair, suit midnight blue, hand on the shoulder of a senator. The crowd orbited him like obedient moons. When he saw her, he hesitated a flicker, barely there, then smiled, stepping forward with predatory charm. "Ava Kingsley, my God, it's been years." His voice was honey poured over steel. "You worked here, didn't you? My father always spoke well of your diligence." She nodded once. He spoke better than his accountants did. That made his smile tighten, just enough for her to notice. Waiters floated by with trays of oysters and caviar. Ava didn't eat. She watched. Her eyes moved the way her father's used to, detail by detail, from the antique chandeliers down to the scuffed corner where one marble tile had been replaced. The floor plan hadn't changed. Neither had the arrogance. "Would you join us for a toast?" Graham gestured toward the dais. "After all, this place owes a great deal to its loyal help." The word landed like a slap. She followed him anyway, every step rehearsed in her mind, the velvet box in her pocket pressed against her ribs. The MC's voice rose above the crowd. "Tonight we honor a century of Whitlock legacy, industry, charity, family." Ava's chest buzzed with quiet fury. "Family?" Graham lifted his glass. "To legacy." But his voice cut off when Ava stepped forward. Her heels clicked like a metronome. Every camera turned. "Legacy is built on truth," she said. Clear. Unshaken. And this one was stolen. The murmurs spread like ripples. She opened the velvet box. Inside, under the light, the blue sapphire ring gleamed, engraved with the Whitlock crest, and the name Elijah Kingsley. Her father, "Your father gave that ring to my father," she said evenly, "before your lawyers rewrote his will, before your brother moved the money." For one long second, the room froze. Even the quartet stopped playing. Graham's jaw flexed. "You're mistaken. That's a forgery." Ava smiled faintly. "That's what you said about the appraisal report. And the bank ledger. You remember the number, don't you? Account 7,714. The senator shifted uneasily. A few guests began whispering. "Miss Kingsley, Graham said, voice low. This isn't the place. It's the perfect place. She clicked open her phone and projected a document onto the ballroom screen, the estate's appraisal inventory. One line item glowed in red. Ring. Sapphire. Pressed. Transferred without record. The crowd erupted. Graham's wife's champagne flute shattered on the floor. Security approached, but Graham raised a hand. Let her finish, he said through his teeth. His tone carried that same false civility that had buried men like her father for decades. Ava kept her eyes on him. My father died believing this family would honor their contract. He didn't know his signature had been copied. He didn't know the codicil naming me beneficiary was shredded in this house. Someone gasped. A journalist in the corner lifted her phone. Graham took a step forward, smile fixed. You're emotional. It's understandable. I'm not emotional, Ava said. I'm thorough. She placed a USB stick on the podium. The sound of plastic on wood was louder than applause. That's the chain of custody log, notarized. Every transfer, every date. You can verify the hash, or we can let the court do it. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the chandelier bulbs. Then, quietly, Graham leaned close enough for only her to hear. You have no idea what you've started. Ava met his eyes, steady as stone. Neither do you. When she turned to leave, she caught sight of Marina Whitlock, Graham's sister, watching from the staircase. Her expression was not disgust, it was recognition, a tremor of guilt. Marina's fingers tightened around a glass until her knuckles whitened. Ava gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod, a signal that said, you'll have to choose. Outside, the night air hit cold and clean. She could still hear murmurs behind the doors. Forgery. Investigation. Kingsley. She inhaled once 3 seconds in. 3 held. 3 out. Under the streetlight, she opened her phone again. A message blinked from an unknown number. You shouldn't have come. Ava exhaled, then typed back one line. You shouldn't have lied. She slipped the ring back into her coat pocket. The sapphire caught a shard of light, flickered once, then went dark. Behind her, sirens began to climb the hill, not fast, not urgent, just steady. The kind of sound that promised things were finally moving. The next morning, the Whitlock mansion didn't glitter, it buzzed. Paper shredders hummed behind closed doors, and somewhere in the distance, a printer spat out frantic denials. Ava walked through the back corridor, following the hum of fluorescent lights, her steps echoing off cold marble. Sloane was already waiting in the estate's old accounting room, sleeves rolled up, eyes sharp. You really lit the fuse last night, she said, sliding a cup of black coffee across the table. Half of Beverly Hills is calling it the Sapphire Scandal. I didn't start it, Ava replied. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already burning. The room smelled of dust and ink. Old ledgers filled the shelves, meticulous records of transactions, dating back 3 generations. She'd once cleaned this room with rags and polish. Now she was here to expose it. The symmetry wasn't lost on her. Sloane pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. These are the Whitlock Foundation accounts, she said. They claimed the trust was closed when your father died. But look here, posthumous withdrawals, routed through offshore subsidiaries. The timestamps line up with your father's hospitalization. Ava leaned in. The numbers flickered on the screen, sterile yet damning. You're sure? Each transfer's been verified through bank logs. Digital signatures match Graham's. I've also got 3 invoices for consulting fees, signed by his sister, Marina. Ava's chazit tightened. He used her name, or she lent it, Sloane said quietly. Either way, it's her signature. The door creaked open. Graham Whitlock stepped in, flanked by his lawyer, Elias Ward, a man whose smile had all the warmth of a scalpel. Miss Kingsley, Graham said, smooth as glass, You seem to have a knack for dramatics. This, he gestured to the glowing spreadsheet, is trespassing and theft of proprietary information. Ava didn't flinch. I followed the audit request filed last week. Judge Levy approved preliminary discovery. You might want to check your email before using words like theft. Sloan turned the laptop around to face them. You signed that authorization yourself, Mr. Whitlock. The silence stretched. Graham's lawyer adjusted his tie. Regardless, this is an internal matter. You have no legal right to be here. Ava took out a small silver recorder. Pressed play. Graham's voice filled the room. Let her in. If she wants to dig, let her. We have nothing to hide. The playback ended. The air thickened. You recorded me. Graham's smile faltered. No, Ava said softly. You recorded yourself. Public gala. Open mic. Sloan stifled a laugh. So much for nothing to hide. When they left the audit room, the tension lingered like smoke. The corridors were lined with oil portraits of ancestors, staring down in silent judgment. Ava paused before one of an older man, Henry Whitlock. The brass plaque below his face read, Vision, Honor, Continuity. Her reflection overlapped his in the glass. For a second, it looked as though his eyes were looking through her. Sloane's voice broke the silence. You okay? Ava nodded. He built something worth believing in. His son turned it into something worth suing. They turned a corner and nearly collided with Marina Whitlock. She was dressed in gray silk, her face pale and drawn. Ava, she said, voice tight. We need to talk. Sloane stepped back, cautious. Privately, Marina added. They moved into a smaller parlor, the kind lined with too many mirrors. Marina's hands trembled as she poured herself water. You humiliated my brother last night. Do you have any idea what that's done? Yes, Ava said. It's called accountability. Marina set down the glass. He's not a good man, but you don't understand what he's capable of. Then explain it to me. Marina hesitated, then opened her clutch and handed Ava a folded document. The codicil, my father's real addendum. I kept it hidden because I thought Graham would destroy it. Ava unfolded the paper. The ink was faded but clear. Henry Whitlock's signature, dated 2 weeks before his death. It named Elijah Kingsley as co-trustee of the Whitlock Foundation, Ava's father. This changes everything, Ava whispered. Marina looked at her, eyes glassy. If you go public with that, Graham will burn everything to the ground to protect himself, including you. Then he'll finally be out of hiding, Ava said, folding the paper again, and I'll be waiting. Later that night, in Sloane's downtown office, the two women scanned the codicil into evidence. The scanner hummed like a warning. You need to file this immediately, Sloane said. But we have a problem. The original signature needs validation. We'll need Dr. Abrams from the notary archive to testify it's authentic. Ava nodded. Set it up. Chain of custody stays with you until we file. Already logged and time-stamped, the city lights flickered against the window. Ava watched her reflection again. Same eye, same key at fire. Her phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. Stop digging, or we dig up yours. Her fingers stilled over the screen. He's panicking, she said. Sloane leaned back. Good. Panic makes people sloppy. But Ava didn't smile. Panic also makes people dangerous. Hours later, Marina sat in her car outside the Whitlock mansion, engine idling, hands gripping the steering wheel. Inside, she could see Graham pacing near the window, phone to his ear. I've handled it. He barked into the receiver. The fire will look accidental. She'll have nothing left to prove. Marina's stomach dropped. The fire. She turned off the car, trembling. Her reflection in the rearview mirror looked like someone else entirely. Her father's portrait flashed in her mind. Honor, she whispered. Forgive me. Papa, and pressed record on her phone. Back in the city, Ava was locking her office when she heard the faint buzz of an email notification. Subject line: Audit anomaly detected from Miles Ortega, the head of Whitlock Security, the one who'd said nothing during the gala. Inside the message was a single line: "He's moving assets tonight. I can get you proof." "But you didn't hear it from me." Ava's pulse quickened. She stared out at the street below, cars sliding through the rain, neon bleeding on asphalt. She typed a quick reply: "Meet me at the old appraisal office at dawn." She closed her laptop, exhaled, and touched the velvet box once more, feeling the ring's weight through the fabric. Outside, thunder rolled over the hill. Somewhere not far away, a siren began to wail, a long, rising sound that carried the taste of danger and inevitability. And Ava, for the first time, felt not fear but momentum. The old appraisal office sat on the edge of downtown, wedged between a shuttered pawn shop and a diner that never seemed to close. By dawn, fog rolled in from the freeway, softening the hard outlines of the street. Inside, fluorescent light hummed over stacks of metal filing cabinets, dusted with decades of neglect. Ava arrived first, her coat damp from the mist. She moved with deliberate calm, but her pulse drummed against her ribs. On the back table, she laid out the codicil copy, the notarized log, and a small digital recorder, everything in duplicate, one for the lawyer, one for the record. The door creaked open. Miles Ortega stepped in, tall and lean, eyes scanning the room like a soldier entering a potential trap. "You're early," Ava said. "I don't like witnesses," he replied, locking the door behind him. His tone wasn't hostile, just tired. "You said you wanted proof. I've got it." He handed her a flash drive in a sealed evidence bag. The label read, "Video Log 7B. Whitlock Server Cam." Ava glanced up. "From the security archives," he nodded. "Graham made me wipe it last night. I cloned the drive before deletion. Chain of custody. I time-stamped it and kept the drive sealed in my locker. You'll find my initials across the seam." She examined the seal, his handwriting neat and precise. "You realize giving me this makes you complicit?" Miles smirked faintly. "I was already complicit the moment I followed his orders. I'd rather be useful now." She slotted the drive into her laptop, the screen filled with grainy footage from the Whitlock basement vault. Graham, leaning over a safe, pulling out thick folders marked "Accounts Foundation." His expression was tight, hurried. He placed the papers into a briefcase, then glanced toward the camera, straight into the lens as if daring it to blink. "Timestamp matches the night after the gala," Miles said quietly. He moved everything to his private study, probably to destroy it. Ava clicked pause. The image froze on Graham's face, jaw set, mouth slightly open, like a man caught between arrogance and fear. "This is enough to open a criminal audit," she said. Miles hesitated. "There's more." The files he pulled, one of them had your father's signature. "And mine?" Ava turned sharply. "Yours." He nodded, shame flickering in his eyes. "I was head of logistics back then. I signed the delivery manifests. I didn't know he was moving falsified assets." Ava studied him for a long second. "You kept your name clean in every report I've seen, because he made me rewrite them." His voice cracked slightly. He said if I didn't, he'd make sure my brother's medical records vanished. And they did. So I stayed quiet. For a moment, the only sound was the flicker of the light overhead. Then Ava said softly, "Silence isn't the same as safety. It just delays the cost." Miles exhaled, shoulders sagging. "Then it's time to pay." By mid-morning, Sloan arrived with a portable evidence kit camera, gloves, sealant strips, and a thermal printer for chain logs. Everything gets bagged, she instructed. 2 signatures, minimum, per item. No gaps, no breaks. Ava handed her the drive. Seal this first. We'll get forensic verification on the metadata hash. Sloane slid it into a foil-lined pouch, printed a barcode, and handed Ava a stylus. Your initials here, the tip scratched across the plastic. A.K. The act felt oddly ceremonial, like carving her name into something that could no longer be erased. When they finished cataloging, Sloane said, "Next step is the notary archive. Dr. Abrams will confirm the codicil signature. We'll hand off the drive to the forensic lab for duplication." Ava nodded, but her phone buzzed before they could move. Unknown number again. Your friend Miles should have stayed quiet. She looked up at him, every nerve sharpening. "They're watching you." Miles gave a short, humorless laugh. Wouldn't be the first time. At the notary archive, the air was cold enough to bite. Dr. Abrams, an older man with hands that shook only when idle, studied the codicil under magnification. Ink composition predates digital replication, he murmured. This signature's genuine, pressure marks consistent with a fountain pen, dated 2 weeks before Henry Whitlock's death. Ava leaned closer. "Can you testify to that?" "I will, but I should warn you Graham's people called this morning. They requested all prior entries for the Whitlock estate be sealed, pending litigation." Sloane cursed under her breath. "He's trying to lock down the archive." Abrams slipped the document into a protective sleeve. "Then I suggest you make this public before he buries the rest." They exchanged a glance, the quiet kind that meant there's no going back now. Outside, the afternoon light had turned sharp, slicing through the smog. Ava and Miles loaded the evidence case into Sloane's car. As she reached for the passenger handle, Ava froze. Someone had scratched a line across the side panel, a single word, jagged and deliberate. "Liar." She felt the heat rise in her chest, but her voice stayed calm. "Drive." As they pulled into traffic, a black sedan slipped into the rear view, 2 cars back. Staying perfectly steady, Miles glanced at it. "He's not subtle. He doesn't need to be," Ava said. "Intimidation's cheaper than strategy." The car followed for 8 blocks, then turned off. Still, the silence it left behind felt heavier than the pursuit. That night, the evidence sat sealed in Sloane's downtown vault. Ava stayed late, cataloging photographs and statements. Each label she printed felt like an act of defiance. Exhibit 3 amperes. Audit logs. Exhibit 5C. Video proof. Her hands trembled once, not from fear, but from the weight of precision. Every tag meant one less lie standing. The office clock ticked past 10 when Miles returned. He looked pale, eyes shadowed. "We have a problem." "What now?" "The internal log, the copy we sent to the state lab, someone accessed it remotely. Metadata shows an attempt to overwrite." Ava straightened. "From where?" "The Whitlock network." "Can they alter the original?" "No. It's read-only once sealed. But they're trying to corrupt the timestamps. Make it look like you tampered." Sloane's voice came from the doorway. "Then we need physical custody transfer tonight. Judge Levy can issue an interim seal order if we file before midnight." Ava grabbed her coat. "Let's go." They reached the courthouse at 1:43 p.m. The halls were mostly dark, echoing with the hum of late-night custodians. In courtroom B12, the judge sat half awake, glasses low on his nose. "You're certain about this?" he asked, signing the form. "Once sealed, nothing leaves without a court order." "Exactly the point," Ava said. He stamped the papers. The sound of the gavel striking once echoed like closure. Chain of custody complete. On the drive back, rain began to fall, light at first, then steady, Miles sat in silence, gripping the wheel. "You think this will hold?" he asked quietly. "It will," Ava said, "because now, if they touch it, it's not my fight alone. It's the state's." He nodded, exhaling slowly. "Then maybe there's a chance." Ava watched the raindrops slide down the glass, each one catching the city lights, like tiny confessions. She thought of her father's steady hands, the ring still in her pocket, the weight of everything she'd refused to bury. When they stopped at a red light, she saw the reflection of the courthouse seal, glinting faintly on the briefcase between them, blue and silver. Unbroken, a single thought crossed her mind, quiet and resolute. Truth has its own clock. It just never stops ticking. The probate clerk's office smelled like copier heat and lemon wipes. Low ceilings, bad art, a clock that insisted on being heard. Sloane slid a Redwell across the counter, palms flat. "The way you steady a tray in rough air." Original codicil, affidavit from the notary archive, preliminary chain logs, she said, stamped receipt, file stamped, copy back. The clerk, eyebrows like pencil check marks, took the packet without ceremony. The rubber stamp thudded twice, ink a little dry, then the forms disappeared into a gray bin marked intake. A fluorescent flickered and recovered. Ava stood a step back from the counter. She didn't pace. She watched the stamp's faint bleed on the paper edges and felt the ring warm against her skin. Crest turned inward. A habit now. Marina arrived 10 minutes late. Sunglasses indoors. Cardigan buttoned wrong. She didn't remove the glasses. "Where do I sign?" she asked. Voice small but unbroken. Sloane tapped the signature block. "Affidavit confirming custody of the document between the date your father gave it to you and the date you delivered it for scan. Initial each paragraph. No adjectives. Just facts." Marina's pen shook on the first line, steadied on the second, became a rhythm by the fourth. She passed the page back and looked at the clock like it might offer absolution. "It won't feel better today," Ava said quietly. "It might feel right tomorrow." Marina nodded once. The clerk returned with a time-stamped copy. 1014 A.M. The ink shone a little. They stepped into the hallway at the same time. A bailiff opened the stairwell door. A gust of cooler air found them, carrying old paint, disinfectant, and an echo of voices from floors below. Phones vibrated along the corridor like polite insects. Sloane checked hers and swore under her breath. He moved first. Marina's sunglasses came off. What did he do? Sloane turned the screen. A push alert bloomed under a headline that had learned how to grin. "Whitlock forgery expert flags altered addendum in family video." The thumbnail showed the Whitlock library, lights low. A TV frame paused on a hand, sliding paper into view. "He's staging his own reveal," Sloane said. 30 minutes. Heritage Gallery. On the estate. Ava breathed in, held, out. 3, 3, 3. Then we go. The gallery had new lighting. Colder, brighter. The kind of white that flatters paintings and kills faces. Cameras nested at the back like patient birds. Donors wore concern like a garment that could be returned if it didn't match. Graham stood in the center under a portrait of Henry Whitlock reading a ledger. His tie was perfect. His smile did work. Beside him, an independent document analyst with a tie clip that wanted attention, and a laptop open to a frame-by-frame UI. "Thank you all for coming," Graham said, voice in public mode. "I hate that we have to do this at all, but when my family's legacy is attacked, facts must answer." Isha Stewart and the analyst tapped. The screen filled with grainy home video. Henry at his desk, a fountain pen, paper angled toward the camera. There was no audio, only the hush of expensive air. "Here," the analyst said, finger grazing the trackpad. "Note the hesitation in the pen stroke on the capital H." Authentic signatures show fluidity. This shows lift and reapplication. And here's subpixel artifacts along the line where the date sits. Signs of compositing. Cámaras murmured. The pause between words was a performance, and the room practiced being convinced. Sloane leaned toward Ava. Subpixel artifacts, she whispered. He watched a tutorial. Where'd he get Henry on video? Marina asked, stunned. That's our den. Old tape, Ava said, repurposed for a story. Graham put on compassion. We all want truth. No one here takes pleasure in confronting a misunderstanding. But this codicil, regrettably, appears altered. He looked toward Ava, found her in the crowd, and opened his hands as if offering clean water. Ava didn't speak. She tapped her phone once. The gallery lights fluttered just enough to make people look up and remember electricity exists, and recovered. The analyst went still for half a second. He didn't like variables. May I? Sloane asked, already moving toward the HDMI switcher at the AV rack. Graham's jaw flexed. He smiled more. Transparency is a friend. Of course. The screen shifted to a split display. Left the video Graham had played, with its neat boxes and authoritative UI. Right, a file properties window projected from Sloane's laptop, the codicil scan they had lodged 2 hours before. Court timestamp visible. Hash in the corner like a quiet hammer. 606 åtifto. Sita. Sloane's voice stayed even. This is the copy filed this morning. Hash generated on ingest. If anyone has an identical file with a different hash, I'd love to meet their physics. A couple of chuckles skated across the floor and died. The analyst adjusted his tie clip. Ava stepped forward. She didn't touch the podium. The notary archive will testify. The court has chain of custody. If you're staging theater, keep it out here. Inside, we have rules. Graham shows outrage. You accuse me of fabricating evidence in my own home. Not fabricating, Ava said. Curating. The analyst cleared his throat, finding a new lane. Even if the scan is authentic, the video suggests the original may have been adjusted before scanning. Sloane toggled to a second window. Video you provided, she said, shows splices at 17, Ctrl-C, and 46 seconds, audio drops prov lift. The timecode stutters. Also, the pen in your original is a modern German nib. Henry never owned. She glanced up. Dry. You should have checked the catalog. His executor did. One of the donors made a small choking sound that wanted to be a cough and wasn't. Marina stepped into the light. She didn't look at her brother. My father handed me the codicil 2 weeks before he died. He said, honor is the only interest that compounds forever. I hid it because I thought Graham would destroy it. I was right. She turned slightly, not to the cameras, but toward the portrait overhead. I'm done hiding. Graham's smile cracked. It wasn't a big crack. It didn't need to be. He turned to the room with a practiced weariness. I love my sister. Grief confuses timeline. Anyone can be misled. Ava let the room breathe. Negative space did its work. The distant tick of the gallery's climate monitor, the soft hiss of the HVAC, the way shoes remember to be quiet on polished floors. Then she pushed a single button on her phone. Audio filled the gallery tinny. Phone captured the acoustics of a big room doing their best with a small device. Graham's voice, unmistakable, clipped by irritation. The fire will look accidental. She'll have nothing left to prove. Silence swallowed the next second. The analyst closed his laptop very slowly. Cameras exhaled as if they'd been holding their breath for years. Graham's first instinct reached for litigation. Deepfake, he said. Too fast. Apps. Chain. Sloane said, the word a clean blade, captured on a device retained by Ms. Whitlock, logged at 0812 hash. She tapped the corner of her screen. Different hammer, same wall. Graham took a step toward the edge of his platform, then remembered gravity. You're weaponizing grief, he told the room. This is what ambition looks like when it wears virtue. Ava kept her shoulders level. Ambition builds houses for the wrong reasons. Virtue checks the receipts. The lights dimmed for a breath and returned somewhere. A circuit tested itself and passed. A reporter near the back lowered her phone like it had grown heavier. Marina looked at her brother. "Stop," she said, soft enough that it didn't reach the cameras, and loud enough that it reached him. "Please." He stared at her for the length of a heartbeat that belonged to another life. "You don't know what you're undoing." "I know exactly," she said, "and I know what I'm rebuilding." Sloane disconnected the feed. The projector went blank. The room suddenly indecent without a screen to look at. People remembered they had faces. "We're done here," Sloane announced, tone courteous. "Final. The rest belongs to the court." They turned to leave. Behind them, the portrait of Henry sat in his frame, ledger open to a page. No one could read from where they stood. The climate monitor clicked once, twice, as if agreeing to hold steady. In the corridor, the air cooled. Security didn't block their path. Someone in a tuxedo stepped aside with a politeness he might keep. Now that he had tried it, Marina stopped by the stair rail, hand on the polished wood. The varnish felt like memory. "You'll need me to testify," she said. "I will," Ava nodded. "Bring the cardigan you wore when he told you about the fire," she said. "It'll remind you what the room smelled like." Marina blinked. "Smoke. Lemon," Ava said. "From the wipes. You'll remember the words better if the room's still there." They reached the door. Light from outside threw a rectangle across the floor. Dust motes trying out freedom. Ava paused, touched the ring through fabric, and felt the oval answer, small and exact. 3 in, she thought. 3 held, 3 out. The breath didn't make a speech. It made a lane, then they stepped into it, and for a second that had nothing to do with spectacle and everything to do with torque. The day felt like it had learned where to face. The hallway smelled wrong before she saw it wet ash, and melted plastic braided into a sweetness that had no business being sweet. Blue strobes pulsed against the peeling paint, turning the third-floor landing into a cheap aquarium. A fan thrummed in the stairwell, pushing steam and smoke like a tired tide. Ava took the last 2 steps slow. A strip of yellow tape sagged from her doorframe. On the wood above the knob, someone had chalked a crescent, where heat had taken the varnish to blister. "Ma'am," a firefighter said, visor up, eyes rimmed pink. "You live in 3C?" "Yes." The word came clean. She kept her hands still. The ring was warm under fabric, the crest against skin, as if learning her pulse. "We knocked it down fast. Origin point looks like your living room near the outlet by the piano." He glanced past her shoulder at the corridor. "Arson investigators en route. You can't go in yet." Behind him, the apartment breathed out wet drywall. Wool. A sweetness that remembered varnish and glue. A blackened ribcage of iron showed where the piano used to be. The harp exposed like anatomy lessons you never wanted. A neighbor hovered by the stairs with a grocery tote, and a look he hadn't earned. "I saw a guy in a hoodie," he said to anyone who would catch it. "Skull on a lighter. Real funny. Until it wasn't." The firefighter nudged the door wider with a boot. Heat had curled the photo frames. Glass had spidered and dropped. A circle of carpet was gone down to plywood, the classic V pattern fanning toward the outlet. The paint above it blistered in fish scales. "Accelerant?" Ava asked. "We'll know after the lab," he said. "But the pour looks messy." He pointed with a gloved finger to a dark halo around the baseboard. We'll take samples along the char line. She nodded once and did not enter. The rules mattered. They were the only part of the night that could still be made to hold. A second truck arrived. A woman in a navy jacket with CES on the back ducked under the tape, snapped on nitrile gloves, and opened a pelican case with the reverence of a ritual she still respected. "Scene low starts now," she said, voice steady. "Time is 2117. Investigator Ree. 2 firefighters present. Tenant identifies as Kingsley. Ava." Ava gave her name and stepped back into the hall's cooler air. A portable halogen popped and filled the room with hard light that didn't flatter anything. Ree crouched by the outlet, photographed from 4 angles, then placed a metal can over a scrap of carpet, like covering a candle to save the last light. Neighbors made a low weather behind the tape, quiet outrage, speculative guilt, the sound of people trying on empathy before deciding if it fit. A child pressed his palm to the stairwell glass and left a fog circle. His mother wiped it away before it could fade on its own. Sloane arrived breathless, hair damp from a sprint through the drizzle. She looked past Ava into the room and caught herself before the inhale turned into a sound. "You okay?" "I'm not hurt." Ava kept her tone flat enough to stack evidence on the piano. Ree stood. "We'll need your statement tonight if you can manage it. And any recent threats." "Plenty," Sloane said. "We'll print them." Ree glanced at the door jamb where the latch had swollen and stuck. "No pry marks. Entry likely voluntary or pre-fire." She sniffed the air near the outlet, a small, practiced motion. "We'll follow NFPA guidance for classification, but nobody's calling this an accident yet." Ava watched the iron harp cool by degrees. Her mother used to polish the fall board with a cloth that smelled like lemon, left the lid, lifted a finger on humid nights so the wood could breathe. Now the keys were a fused grin. The ivory's gone to a single gray. The sharps lost their teeth. "Can I take one thing?" Ava asked softly. "Not from your origin area. The end table there, under the window." A shoebox. Ree considered the request, as if moving it across different shelves in her head. "If it's stable and we log it, yes, I'll bag and seal. You won't open it until we do it on record." They went in together. Boots found dry islands between puddles that had the shine of new tiles and weren't. The shoebox had taken water at the corners. Its lid bowed but held. Ree photographed, labeled, slid it into a clean paper sack. "Never plastic for charred paper. Never heat for heat," and printed a sticker that said, "Exhibit F. Kingsley, A. R.E.R. Joe." She had Ava initial the seam. "Chain starts with you," Ree said. "We'll keep it honest." Ava's hands shook once when she signed. She steadied them against her thigh, the way her mother had said to do before a difficult passage. Quiet body. True tempo. Back in the hall, the neighbor with the grocery tote found his courage. "I got a clip," he said, holding up his phone. "Guy on a scooter. Stopped out front at 8:58. Skull lighter." "I kid you not." Sloane took the device gently, as if it could break from being looked at wrong. "We'll airdrop to CSU," she said, "and we'll want your written permission here." She passed the phone to Ree, who paired it to a field tablet and logged the transfer with a stylus stroke that made a sound like a dry leaf. On screen, a grainy figure in a dark sweatshirt hopped a curb and killed his headlight. The lighter flashed once, a tiny skull catching the sodium vapor streetlight, a foolish emblem trying to be brave. Plate not visible, face a smear, but the timestamp sat in the corner like a witness that couldn't be argued out of the room. "Arling Wu Ba Itzi. Enough to chase," Ree said. "Not enough to chard." She looked at Ava. "Not unkind, but it helps." By 10, the fire was cold enough to leave with the living. Ree sealed the door with a strip of tamper tape and a signature that looked like a heartbeat in ink. "We'll have a preliminary by morning," she said. "Full lab takes what it takes." Ava nodded and followed Sloane down the stairs. Outside, the rain had shifted to mist. The building exhaled a smell like coins and soot. Across the street, a teenager balanced a pizza box on one hand and watched the trucks idle. Life refused to find a violin. Miles waited by the curb, a brown paper bag in his hands and an apology on his face. He didn't try to say out loud, "I came as soon as I heard." "You heard because you're tied into his camera alerts," Sloane said, not looking at him. "I heard because I still have neighbors," he answered. He turned to Ava. "I'm sorry." Ava studied him for a beat that had room in it. "You warned me," she said, "and you helped the lab get the video. Both can be true." He held up the bag. Two things survived on the kitchen counter: paperweight and tin of pencils. The rest. He let the sentence choose not to finish. They stood in a small triangle of quiet while sirens wound down. Somewhere, a bus sighed and shouldered on. Somewhere, a dog objected and then forgot why. "Evidence locker?" Sloane asked. Ava glanced at the paper sack with the shoebox inside. "First, the clinic," she said. "I want to put this somewhere that remembers breath." They drove across town with the heater ticking. In the passenger seat, the sealed sack lay between Ava's knees like a small animal, insisting on its warmth. Miles followed in his truck, headlights respectful. The clinic after hours was a softer place, waiting room chairs, still new enough to be a little proud of themselves. Sanitizer dispensers blinking small green OKs. Ava set the sack on the intake counter and wrote on an index card in block letters, "Exhibit F, ash and fragments. Do not open to court custody A. M." She slid the card under the tape like a label under glass. Sloane unscrewed a clean mason jar from a supply shelf and set it down. "For the sample that can travel," she said, "we do this right." They opened the paper sack together under the camera mounted for meds. Ree had taped the shoebox shut with a single cross strip. Sloane cut along the seam without breaking the label. Inside, a smell rose that was not smoke and not paper, something nearer to old song. On top lay a page half burned, staves still legible at the center, edges curled like a body holding heat. Ava didn't touch it. She let the air move around it. She lowered the jar and, with a folded index card, coaxed a teaspoon of ash that had settled in the corner clean, dry, unclaimed into glass. The tiny slide made a whisper. They sealed the lid. Sloane printed a sticker, "F1 ash, living room," and had Ava initial the ring of tape. "Receipt," Sloane said, almost to herself. Ava placed the jar beside the note and stepped back. The clinic's vending machine hummed. In the far exam room, a blood pressure cuff blinked its small green pulse, as if keeping time for a song no one was ready to play. Miles stood in the doorway and didn't come in. "You can sleep at my place," he said. "Couch is clean. Locks work." "I'll stay with Sloane," Ava answered, not unkind. "We have filings at 8. He nodded. He took the paperweight from the brown bag and set it next to the jar, a small globe with an air bubble that traveled when you tilted it. A world in need of persuasion. They left the clinic lights low. Outside, the mist had settled into a respectable fog, thinning the city to outlines and intentions. Sloane locked the door twice. Ava slid her hand into her pocket and felt the ovals cool again. 3 in, 3 held, 3 out. Back in the car, she watched the building until the reflection of the lobby glass gave her back a double image, her face and the little circle of light where a jar sat next to a globe. Both labeled, both waiting. The night didn't offer comfort. It offered a lane, and she took it, The courtroom ran on fluorescence and coffee, the kind of light that forgives no one. A calendar hung behind the clerk like a quiet threat. People took seats the way they take medicine. Judge Levy entered without ceremony. "Good morning," she said, as if daring anyone to disagree. Her robe fell clean. Her hair did not try for drama. On for evidentiary. The clerk announced, "Authentication of codicil, chain of custody, digital media, preliminary cause and origin." Levy looked over the rim of her glasses. "Counsel, we will proceed like adults. If anyone performs, they can do it in the hallway for free." Ethan rose at plaintiff's table. "Plaintiff calls Dr. Stephen Abrams." Abrams took the stand with a notary's posture upright. "Economical. No. Appetit for adjectives. Right hand up. Oath. Seat." Ethan kept it simple. "Dr. Abrams, you maintain the notary archive for the probate district." "I do." "Please describe your examination protocol." "Magnification for pen lift, ink composition via VSC, pressure analysis. We log chain at intake, generate hash on scan, and cross-reference signature specimen." Ethan placed the codicil copy in front of him, marked Exhibit 12. "Is this a true and correct copy of the document you examined this week?" "It is." "Signature pressure matches Henry Whitlock's exemplars from the 1990 seconds. Ink predates common Gell compositions. Date line shows no splice. Your opinion." "Authentic." Defense stood with a small smile. Elias Ward always looked like he owned a better courtroom somewhere else. "Dr. Abrams, you are aware of modern techniques. Inkjet simulation, pressure, forgeries, so-called stroke training software." "I read," Abrams said, "and the video released yesterday suggests." Levy raised a hand. "No references to press outside these walls." "Try again." Ward adjusted. "Do you concede that a highly skilled forger could fabricate what you call pressure consistency?" Abrams considered boredom and chose accuracy. "A forger can mimic slope and lift. They cannot, however, create aging where there is none, or erase the microfiber ink sink of 2 decades. This ink lived the years." "Ethan." "Nothing further." Levy scribbled a line. "Subject to wait at trial. Exhibit 12. Authenticated for the limited purpose of this hearing." "Next." Ethan called. "Investigator Ree." She wore the CSU jacket like a uniform that came with verbs, credentials. Certified Fire Investigator, NFPA, 921 compliant. 10 years with the county. "What did you observe at the Kingsley residence?" "Area of origin near the living room outlet by an upright piano. Classic V patterns. Low burning along baseboard. Irrégular pour. Collected carpet and substrate samples. Preserved in unlined cans per protocol. Preliminary cause. Incendiary. Pending la confirmation." She didn't look at the gallery when she said it. She looked at the floor plan on the screen and the photos she had taken, because evidence is a better audience. Ward rose. "Investigator Ree, you cannot rule out electrical fault." "Can you?" "Not as a religion," Ree said. "As an observation, yes. Breaker functioned. Outlet shows external heat effect, inconsistent with internal arc. No beating on conductors. Your neighbor witness reliable." "I don't rank people," Ree replied. "I log them." The video clip has a visible lighter 15 minutes before ignition indicators. Ward tried a smile. "You can't testify that my client had anything to do with the fire." "I can testify a fire happened," Ree said. "Causation is your hobby, not mine." A few throats made the sound that wants to be a laugh and decides to live as a cough. Levy's pen paused. then moved again. Ethan called, "K. Din." Next, a lab tech with tidy hair and patience described the digital media handling on the Whitlock security footage clone created via right blocker. SHA 2, 5, 6. Generated on acquisition, copy sealed as Exhibit 9. Hash integrity verified at transfer to court last week. Did anyone access the original once sealed? No. The system logs attempted remote alteration of a lab copy. We preserved that attempt. 2. Ward came up with a gleam. Ms. Din. Hashes are not religion either. If someone had access before you generated one, they didn't, Din said, almost gentle. Camera system logs show access at 0142 by user Graham. W. Then block. Our acquisition began 02 0 dapen. The math doesn't care how we feel about it. Levy looked pleased with the math. Chain is boring by design. Mr. Ward. Continue to try and make it exciting, and I'll be forced to enjoy myself. The gallery settled into a useful quiet. Negative space did the heavy lifting, the HVAC's low hum, the dry tick of the wall clock, the faint squeak of the bailiff's shoe at minute 27, pressure without fireworks. Ethan called, Miles Ortega. He moved like a man who had decided to stop lying to his posture. Oath. Seat. You were head of security at the Whitlock estate. Yes. Directing your attention to the night in question, did Mr. Whitlock instruct you to delete any footage? Yes. What did you do? Cloned it first. Logged the clone. Sealed it. He swallowed. Broke a rule to follow the right one. Ward rose slowly, savoring the moment. Mr. Ortega, isn't it true? Your initials appear on inventory, manifests tied to questionable transfers. A decade ago, Miles held his breath, then let it out. They do. You were complicit. I was employed, Miles said, and frightened. That's not a defense. It's a fact. He kept his hands visible on the rail. That's why I'm here now. Ward smiled for the jury that wasn't there. And because you dislike my client, Miles looked at the judge, not the lawyer. I dislike what I did. Levy watched him for a beat that belonged to no one else. Answer stands. Ethan did not rehabilitate. He sat because sometimes you let the truth stand without makeup. Levy leaned back. All right. On the codicil authenticated for this stage, on digital media chain intact. Remote tamper attempt preserved. On cause and origin preliminarily incendiary, we're not trying arson in my calendar call. Mr. Ward. Ward opened his mouth. Levy closed it with a look. No speeches. Motions in limine due by Friday, 5 p.m., by which I mean 5 p.m., not theater o'clock. From the second row, a phone vibrated like a wasp. Someone killed it fast. The room breathed together. Final item. Ethan said, we request a protective order and admonition regarding extrajudicial statements. There has been public commentary that threatens the integrity of these proceedings. Levy's gaze slid to defense. Responses. Ward lifted his palms. My client has merely defended his reputation against defamatory assertion. He is entitled to speak. Your client is entitled to counsel, Levy said, and a fair trial, which extrajudicial character assassination does not assist. Protective order granted. Gag applies to parties and agents. Violations will result in sanctions up to revocation of bail. I have hobbies. Mr. Ward, don't make me choose this one. Graham's jaw set. He sat very still. The stillness of a man who thinks stillness is obedience. His eyes cut to the gallery, then cut away. Levy rapped once with the gavel. We'll reconvene next week for status. Bring me law, not feelings. People stood in a small, civil, papers slid into folders. Exhibits clicked back into boxes like animals returning to dens after daylight. In the corridor, sound returned the hiss of the espresso cart, the soft friction of wool coats against wall paint, a baby's brief protest silenced by a bottle. Sloane exhaled through her nose. "That went as well as reality allows," she said. Ethan checked his watch. "We'll file the protective order with service by close of business." Miles lingered at the door, knuckled pale. "He's not going to respect it," he said. Ava looked at the stencil of sunlight on the floor where the stairwell door threw its rectangle. "That's the point," she said. "Now the failure has a receipt." Across the hall, a reporter pivoted, disappointed. "New quotes today." The courthouse, unimpressed, carried on being a building. Sloane touched Ava's elbow. "Clinic at 4. We promised chairs and blood pressure cuffs, not headlines. Sharp means paid," Ava said, automatic and true. They moved with everyone else toward the elevators. A bailiff held the door and didn't make a face. The car smelled of paper and winter air brought in on people's sleeves. As the doors slid shut, Ava caught a last glimpse of the courtroom clock, its second hand doing exactly what clocks do: no flourish, no rush, just forward. By noon, the hallway tasted like burnt coffee and printer ozone. Bad lighting made good Souts look tired. On the corkboard, a fresh notice about the protective order hung crooked under a thumbtack that had already lost patience. Ava stood by the window where the glass ran cool. She watched sun flare off a bailiff's badge. Her phone stayed dark, sealed under the same discipline she used for evidence. Because temptation loves unlocked screens more than truth loves company. Sloane checked the docket with 2 taps. "Status at 1, she said. "Levy's running on time, which means the universe is overdue for a joke." Down the corridor, Graham gave the joke a face. He stepped into a circle of microphones like a man blessing a fountain. "Fabrications," he said. "Smears," he said. "A cleaner with a grudge and a pipeline to corrupt officials," he said. And the cameras drank each word as if thirst were a credential. A deputy cleared his throat, slow and precise. "Sir, the order." Graham didn't look at him, because men who curate rooms pretend furniture can't talk back. Ava didn't move. She watched the way a hot day shimmers over asphalt. You can't touch it and it still burn. At 1258, the courtroom doors opened like a breath held too long. The air inside was colder by design. Levy took the bench with the calm of a surgeon who keeps the playlist low. "On the record," the clerk said. "People v. Whitlock. Status and enforcement of protective order." Pens readied themselves for a problem they already believed in. Levy's eyes found defense first. They didn't blink. "Mr. Ward, please tell me. Your client does not understand simple English, so I can have a nice afternoon." Ward's tie made a helpless triangle. "My client merely responded to provocation." "Your Honor." He half-turned, as if public opinion had a seat at counsel table. Levy's mouth considered a smile and declined. "Deputy, roll the clip." The flat panel burped once and obeyed. Graham on the steps, the county seal patient behind him. His voice turned up to campaign volume. He said, "Corrupt and set up, and we will bury these lies," with the emphasis of a man auditioning for a worse job. Levy let the silence after the clip work. It found the corners and cleaned them. "Mr. Whitlock," she said, "you may think this is television, but the difference is that on television, breaking the rules gets you a renewal." Graham stood as if standing were a defense. "Your Honor, I—" "Stop," Levy said, and the word made more sense than speeches. "Bail is revoked." She didn't raise her voice. "Remanded pending trial. Sanctions to follow. And if anyone needs a glossy explanation, I'll print them one on county letterhead and frame it in the lobby. A murmur tried to be born and thought better of it. The deputy moved like a metronome that had earned the right to set tempo. Chrome flashed. Then cuffs sat where cufflinks used to live. Graham turned toward the gallery by reflex. The smile arrived, then realized it had no function. For a half-second his face looked like an honest one, confused. Empty, unpracticed at gravity. Ward whispered, "We'll appeal to anyone who could hear." No one volunteered to be the appeal. Levy wrote a line that sounded like a period, even though pens make no sound. "Next week," she said, "we deal with scheduling and evidence disputes. Today we deal with consequences." Her gavel tapped once, a sound thinner than TV would allow, and stronger for it. "Court is in recess. Please leave as if you've learned something." The aisle opened. People stood in the rhythm you get after church, when you're not sure you were forgiven. On the way out, a reporter checked his hair in his phone, saw himself properly, and forgot the question he wanted to ask. In the hall, temperature rose back to human. Sloane didn't hide her relief. That's one receipt the internet can read without a caption. Miles hovered by the water fountain. He had a paper cup he wasn't drinking. "His driver's already calling bondsman," he said. "They'll find out the definition of revoked." "Today," Ava nodded. "Not cruel. He'll learn the volume of a lot." She swallowed the metallic chill courtroom's leave and let it settle where anger would have preferred to live. Marina arrived late on purpose. She didn't look at the cuffs. She looked at the floor tiles as if each square had a choice. "You don't have to testify," she said, voice level. "Not if it rips you open." Ava shook her head. "It won't. It already did. Now it's just stitching." They found a bench by the window, where the glass fogged at breath. Negative space checked in the far-off whine of a copy machine. The bitter drift of over-roasted beans, a toddler's single complaint before milk fixed everything. Sloane scrolled once, then put her phone face down like a small act of mercy. "Media split," she said. "Half think the remand is theater. Half think it's oxygen. Both are wrong." Ava said, "It's plumbing." Miles finally drank the water. He made a face, as if bureaucracy had a flavor. "CSU pinged lab found trace petroleum distillates in your carpet sample. Not lamp oil. Cheaper. Hardware store grade." Sloane said. Her pencil was already writing without a paper to receive it. "Receipt stacks higher." A bailiff walked past with a folder under his arm and a small smile he forgot to hide. Even buildings like knowing when they've done something right. Even people trained not to cheer sometimes blink like they did. "Come with me," Marina said suddenly. "This will take 5 minutes, and it will hurt." She led them to a side room labeled "Witness." Fluorescent hum. 2 chairs. 1 table that remembered too many elbows. Marina set her phone on the table. She didn't dramatize the gesture. "Backup of the call I recorded," she said. "Originals with the court. This is for you." Ava didn't reach. "Play it," she said, "because salting wounds is not the same as seasoning truth." Marina touched the screen. Graham's voice filled the small room, low and impatient. The intimacy of a man who assumes walls share his loyalty. "The fire will look accidental. She'll have nothing left to prove." A second voice, his fixer, asked about timing. Graham answered like inventory. "Numbers." Then silence. Then a sigh that thought it was privacy. When it ended, nobody thanked the phone. Sloane wrote the timestamp on a sticky with print precision. Miles stared at the table edge, until wood grain became a map, and then a blank again. "I wore the wrong cardigan that night," Marina said. "It smelled like lemon cleaner." She smiled without any joke in it. "Now I can't walk down the cleaning aisle without thinking about funerals." Ava said, "Bring that to the stand." "Bring the lemon," Marina asked. "Bring the memory. The aisle will do the rest." Outside, a siren stitched the city without urgency. Estrella squeaked. Down the hall, Ward argued with a vending machine and lost. The pretzels refused to fall. Sloane finally allowed one dry line. Justice still more reliable than C3 on the snack rack. Even Miles smiled, and then remembered it was permitted. Afternoon leaned toward ordinary. The building shook off spectacle like chalk dust. Levy's clerk posted an updated calendar in neat blue pen notes about motions, times, the world's least dramatic promises. Clinic at 4, Sloane said again. Ritual now. Chairs delivered. Cuffs calibrated. Ava pictured the waiting room, the jar labeled F1, the small globe with the air bubble that loved to travel. Sharp means paid, she said, and felt the words land in her chest, where breath keeps its tools. At the steps outside, light struck hard and useful. Heat lifted the smell of stone. Graham passed between deputies and into a van that made no sound of victory and no sound of grief. Just the practical hydraulics of a door doing its job. He looked out for someone to catch him. No one tried. For a blink, he seemed surprised by the absence of an audience he hadn't paid for. "Do we say anything?" Miles asked, as if words had a duty. "No," Ava said. "He did." Her hand found the ring through fabric. Crest turned inward, pulse steady against stone. They stood until the van took a right and became part of traffic. Instead of headline, the city kept its pace, unimpressed and generous. Two pigeons negotiated a crust with the seriousness of diplomats who understood scarcity. Sloane checked the time and pocketed her phone without reading it. "We leave now or we're late to improve something that actually breathes," she said. Ava nodded and started down the steps. Feet, choosing the center of each tread like a new habit. At the curb, Marina touched Ava's sleeve. "Tell me how to live with being part of the problem," she said. "No drama, just weather. Make payments," Ava said, "in public and on time." Marina held her gaze. "I can do that." Her mouth learned a smaller, truer shape than a smile. They crossed at the light with everyone else. A bus side open. Kneeled. Let a woman with a cane board without hurry. The ring warmed once under fabric and cooled. Blue kept private. Function kept public. 3 in, 3 held, 3 out. The breath didn't fix anything. It made room. And that, today, was enough to carry the weight the law had finally agreed to lift. By September, the lobby smelled like citrus and copy toner instead of lilies and night. Sun slid in through the east glass and landed on the small plinth near reception where a ring sat under clear acrylic. The placard was a single word, etched without flourish: receipt. Ava paused there every morning. She didn't touch the case. She checked the angle the way you check a deadbolt twice, then moved on, because upstairs, a spreadsheet was waiting to turn into groceries and braces and rent paid on time. Amanda met her at the elevator with a tablet and a pen that clicked like purpose. "Wage transparency memo cleared legal," she said. "Facilities swears the new safety signage will be up by Friday. If procurement stops arguing about fonts, sharp means paid." Ava answered. Amanda's mouth did a quick yes. The elevator smelled faintly of pine sol and old coffee that had learned to be polite on 11. The boardroom had shed its shine. The long table wore honest scratches. The view did not try to impress. Whiteboards ran with timelines, clinic hours, expansion, scholarship pilot, a fund for people who leave bad rooms in a hurry, and a cork wall held charts that refused to strut attrition down. Grievances answered. Delivery. Clocking in before the trucks got sleepy. Sloane stood by the window with a manila folder tucked like a verdict. "Grand people sent notes," she said. "They want impact narratives. I sent anonymized outcomes and a quarterly." They replied, "Heart." I replied, "Heartbeats when people get home on time." "Did they like it?" Ava asked. They'll quote it back at us next cycle, Sloane said, dry as a chalk line. Monroe slipped in with a tote of clinic files. Soap and plain aftershave trailed him like apology done right. Saturday hours are full, he said. Blood pressure machine sulked at noon, but I bribed it with a new cuff and the paperwork penance. Bring a budget that won't scare the accountants. Ava said, paper likes to be courted. He nodded, setting down a laminated sheet with triage stats, ER diversion trending in inches. You could trust. Miles waited in the doorway like a man who still kept one eye on exits. The visitor badge didn't suit him. The steadier posture did. Security walked through it too. He said, also, contractor texted an apology. Fires get out of hand. I preserved it before my better self threw up. Chain intact. Ava asked. Screenshotted. Printed. Hash logged, he said without flinching. Procedure had become a language he could speak without tasting metal. They ran the agenda. Procurement caps. Scholarship criteria blind. To departments where cousins might happen. Time-off policies written for humans, not myths. A union rep zoomed from his car and thanked them for scheduling outside shift change. No one misspelled his name. At noon, the cafeteria griddles hissed like happy weather. The smell of cardamom buns drifted out of the small cafe the shipping crew had adopted. Someone kept the radio low on Old Soul. The baseline knew how to behave around people who'd been on their feet since 7. Ava took her tray to a corner and answered 3 emails, and stopped answering. Through the glass, she could see the ring. From that angle, the blue went slate. Crest turned inward, like secrets kept private on purpose. Patricia Westlake sent an invitation that felt like a favor owed, a gala masquerading as a lecture on civic responsibility. Proceeds to a fund that paid the electric bill for a shelter once, and its own uplighting twice. Ava pushed the email into a folder called Not Yet, and kept moving. Afternoon belonged to operations. The Personnel Committee rewrote a complaint policy so reports landed in inboxes with power and not in broom closets. A slide deck traded stock photos for faces that actually knew the building. Someone asked for a snappier title and was politely ignored. At 3, payroll closed. A green bar slid to done on a big monitor, and the finance team let out the kind of breath that makes shoulders drop an inch. Amanda posted the weekly line on the intranet board. Checks hit Friday by 3 p.m. Sharp means paid. Reaction emojis stayed tasteful. Ava took a floor walk. Shipping air ran cool and metallic. A woman at the conveyor lifted her ear protection and said, "We changed the belt before it screamed," and a man at quality control held up a part with a burr and said, "We'll get the vendor to pretend to be sorry." In legal, a young counsel flagged bond conversion risk without his voice wobbling. "Custodian will testify," he said, "but we should push to convert bearer instruments." Ethan, on speaker, made a noise like a small hammer finding a nail. Near 5, the lobby shifted to end of shift. Boots squeaked, keys chimed, a daycare pickup squealed, and slapped a palm against the vitrine until his mother said gentle, which he interpreted as, "Finish the circle and then stop." So he did. The ring kept its color without fanfare. Marina came through the revolving door with a paper bag folded twice at the top. "No cameras." 5 minutes, she asked. They sat under the mezzanine where voices go soft by design. "I have to say something at the school," she said. "They want ex-wife turned volunteer. I can't decide if that launders, confesses, or helps. Who benefits?" Ava asked. "If I do it right." "The kids," Marina said. "If I do it wrong, me. If I say nothing, him." She set the bag on the bench and opened it like a person who had learned how to handle fragile things. 2 char-streaked frame corners, and a sliver of staff paper that had dodged the worst night. "Thank you," Ava said. Marina nodded, as if water had been offered on a staircase. "The game's Saturday." She added, "Midfield is shade at 4. I'll be there." They didn't hug. They let the silence hold, because sometimes silence is the only container that doesn't leak. A donor wandered in with a suit that apologized for being expensive. He lingered at the case. "Isn't it unkind to display it?" he asked. "Feels like a trophy." "It's a ledger entry," Ava said. "We keep it visible so we remember other columns." He nodded, wrote a check with more humility than zeros, and left it at reception without asking for a photo. Miles appeared with a clipboard and a small win. "No more blind spot at the Northeast badge reader," he said. "Contractor hated me," and then remembered he works for invoices. Sloan slid in from a meeting. Hair up, sleeves shoved. Clinic chairs came early because the supplier's mother reads the paper and told him to hurry. She said, deadpan. She set 2 receipts on the counter with the finality of a printer's edge, one for the chairs, one for the blood pressure cuffs that like to sulk. "Receipt," Ava said, a small smile. "Every story needs one," Sloan said, glancing at the case, and then away. "Because ritual only earns its keep when it doesn't demand applause." Evening took the building down one notch. The cafe closed on time. A cleaner sang under her breath in Spanish, and made the lobby smell like soap and lemons and something close to peace. Ava posted one last note on the intranet. New policy: no emails after 7 unless safety. Rest is part of work. It was the kind of sentence she wished someone had handed her years ago. Now she could hand it to someone else. At the glass, dusk layered itself over the blue until the ring looked like slate again, pressed a shadow of a shadow. A small boy's fog circle faded and revealed the stone without needing permission to shine. Ava breathed once, 3 in, 3 held, 3 out, and the breath didn't fix a thing. It made room. On the way out, she crossed the floor to the vitrine and read the placard as if it were new. Receipt. First, it had meant proof. Then it had meant witness. Tonight it meant agreement, what was owed. Paid forward. Due again on Friday at 3. Outside, the boulevard read itself in taillights. A bus knelt and let a woman with a cane board without hurry. Somewhere above the trees, a plane took off with the modesty jet fuel never learned. Ava turned her collar up against a breeze that had learned restraint inside her coat. The ring warmed against skin and cooled. The blue kept private, the work kept public. She walked to the curb, thinking not of speeches but of chairs arriving on time, of orange slices at midfield, of a jar labeled F1 on a clinic shelf doing the quiet job of remembering what heat cost and what care returned. The city didn't offer comfort, it offered a lane, and she stepped into it, steady as payroll, exact as a stamp, leaving the little blue stone to keep watch without making a sound. Friday wore courthouse air dry, caffeinated, a little too clean. Light came in hard through narrow windows. On the bulletin board, new orders bent under a pushpin like they knew their own weight. The hallway made the noise of a tired aquarium. Shoes whispered on wax. A deputy's radio muttered coordinates no map would ever print. Inside Division 72, the microphones stared like bored birds. The clerk recited numbers that sounded like weather. Evidentiary status. Airship under submission. Protective order affirmed. Levy read without hurry. On the codicil admitted for probate sequence. On digital media preserved. Chain intact. On incendiary noted, not tried today. Counsel will remain acquainted with reality. Pens did their work. No one clapped. The clock moved right along. unimpressed with the moment and glad for it. When it ended, the room exhaled one notch. The deputy opened the door with a small, earned flourish. Ava stepped into the hallway and felt the cooler air against her wrists, like the first sentence of a kinder book. Sloane checked her phone, made a face, tucked it away. "Orders posted," she said. "Nothing dramatic, everything useful. My favorite flavor." Miles waited near the window, hand on the rail, posture new. "CSU sent the lab report," he said. "Generic petroleum distillates. Likely hardware store. Skull lighter. Still stupid. Still not enough by itself. Pieces," Sloane replied. "Courts love puzzles. They just hate being told how to feel about them." A baby down the hall disagreed, and then reconsidered. They left by the south steps. Sun hit the side of the building like a hand on a shoulder. Below, a food truck hissed onions and mercy. "I'll be at the field later," Marina texted, then added a green heart. As if color could calibrate resolve. Ava typed back, "Orange slices on me." The three dots blinked like a shy truth and then disappeared. The afternoon belonged to Ordinary. The clinic printer clicked out intake forms, as if printing could make promises. A stack of folding chairs released with the sigh of objects that preferred to be useful. Monroe talked quietly with a man who held his hat with two hands. Numbers turned into med. Ava watched a toddler chase a dust mote and win. In the lobby, the plinth held steady, glass clean. The placard didn't try to be art. Receipt. A courier dropped a padded envelope. Amanda signed and slit the top. "Payroll confirmation," she said, smiling in lowercase. "Bank says the line held. Friday by 3. Sloane taped the receipt under the vitrine for a moment, then took it down before ritual became theater. "Enough talismans for one day," she said. They returned the lobby to air and footsteps and the faint, lemon promise of a mop. At 3 sharp, someone cheered in finance. It was small on purpose. Ava sent a note on the intranet. "Checks cleared. Go be people." The reactions behaved. By 4, the building tipped toward weekend. Elevators yawned. Conversations shortened. Ava changed her shoes for grass and shade, and put the oranges into a zip bag like a prayer that stained your hands sweet. The park pretended to be a field, lines chalked thin, goals stubborn, bleachers that believed in knees. Parents made weather with their voices, and then remembered they weren't the sky. Marina waved from midfield. She had a thermos, and the calm you earn, one decision at a time. 2 teenagers pretended not to check for Ava and failed with charm. Ava sat, oranges cool against her palm. The ring rested under fabric like a coin that refused to buy anything. Shade moved its edge along the grass with the patience of someone learning to knit. A whistle tried to be relevant. It couldn't help it. Kids ran as if running were the point which, today, was correct. Miles joined them late, hands in the pockets of a jacket that had forgotten how to posture. "Badge readers behave now," he said, as if the field required a status update. "Good," Ava said. "Even grass likes a lock that does its job." Between plays, quiet. A plane wrote a line. Nobody read. A dragonfly hovered, then changed its mind. "Do you think he'll apologize?" Marina asked. "Eyes on nothing. Not on a channel we get," Sloane said from the row behind. Ava peeled an orange and let the skin sit bright on the bench, like a color swatch for relief. On the far sideline, a volunteer coach crouched to tie a shoelace that refused to be coherent. He double-knotted without sermon. The kid tested the knot and sprinted away, certain at exactly the right speed. Ava passed slices down the line, sticky fingers, small grins, pulp on jerseys that would stain and wash and stain again. Monroe arrived late, waved with a clipboard, and didn't talk about blood pressure. The game ended on a not-quite goal and a real laugh. Nobody kept score with malice. Parents clapped, like people who have carried worse weights and were willing to hold this easy one. Ava gathered peels and wrappers, the trash bag soft in her hand like an unearned second chance. Marina stood beside her without words. A small breeze lifted hair at the nape of Ava's neck and set it down gently. "Coffee?" Marina asked. "Later." Ava said, "Let's let this be exactly what it is for another 10 minutes. They watched the field forget it had been a game and returned to being grass. A sprinkler clicked awake and then reconsidered. The sun moved behind the school in no hurry at all. Evening slid over the city with the decorum of a suit that fits. Traffic accepted its fate. Abus knelt, uncomplaining. Back at the building, the lobby lights were softer, and the ring kept its blue under glass like a thoughtful flame. Amanda had left a note on Ava's desk. "Vendor pay. Chair bolts tight. Have a weekend." The handwriting made room for punctuation where email would have hoarded it. Ava walked the empty hall, passing doors that kept their own counsel. In the clinic, the jar labeled F1 sat where it belonged. Shelf 3, left of the tongue depressors. Under the quiet hum of a fridge that knew its job, the ash inside had settled into a shape that refused metaphor. She touched the counter with 2 fingers, a habit without superstition. Then she checked the vitrine once more, the way you check a sleeping child without waking them. Glass, stone, placard, light. Her phone buzzed once. Sloan. Order upload complete. Monday, airship calendar. Ava replied with a thumbs up because some days language didn't need to carry more. Another buzz. Amanda. An employee asked what the ring means. I said proof we pay what we owe. She said same. Ava smiled, and let the smile stop where it belonged. Outside, the air cooled into something almost kind. Street lamps came on with the modesty of stars, near a city that preferred its own constellations. Ava walked without hurry. Shoes, choosing the center of each step. A corner store bell chimed. A kid pressed his hand to the glass of a bus window and left a fog circle that faded in a breath. A dog lied about its opinion and sat. At her building, she paused under the awning and watched the street decide to be quiet. A letter waited on her table upstairs, county seal, the good kind of bureaucracy. She thought about opening it and decided to let the night keep one secret without cost. She leaned against cool stone and let herself breathe. 3 in, 3 held, 3 out. No headlines, no speeches, just a small city, remembering how to take care of its own at the speed of a schedule that honored gravity. Across the way, a second-story window framed a piano. Someone sat down and played 3 notes that had not existed anywhere in the record, then found the rest by ear. It wasn't her mother's song, and it was still correct. Ava looked at her reflection in the glass of the closed florist. It layered with cut flowers, sleeping in buckets beyond her, and the faint ghost of a blue oval on her collarbone, where the necklace would lie if she wore one. She didn't need to. She turned toward the door. The key went in smooth, as if locks believed in good days. A breath of cool, familiar air met her like a receipt handed back without commentary. Behind her, the street went on. The ring under glass held the blue for whoever needed to see it. And somewhere between the courthouse clock and the field chalk, a ledger balanced by the quiet math of enough. There's a quiet truth at the heart of this story. Dignity can't be bought, inherited, or stolen. It's lived. Ava's journey reminds us that justice isn't always about grand gestures or courtroom victories. Sometimes it's about rebuilding the small systems that quietly keep people safe, paid, and seen. Real strength is rarely loud. It's the steady hand that refuses to sign the wrong paper, The breath you take before answering cruelty with composure. The decision to repair instead of destroy. In a world that often rewards arrogance and speed, this story asks something slower and braver: to stay true when no one is watching, to speak even when silence feels safer. Every injustice begins with someone deciding another person is invisible. Every healing begins when we refuse that blindness. Like the saying goes, gold fears no fire. The people who carry their truth through heat and humiliation come out not untarnished but purified. Maybe that's what justice really means. Not vengeance, not spectacle, but balance, the quiet math of enough. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you of a time you stood up or wished you had, share your thoughts below. Tell us what justice looks like in your own life. Click like if you believe integrity still matters. And subscribe for more stories that challenge, heal, and make us think a little deeper about what it means to be human. And tonight, wherever you are, may you find a small piece of peace, the kind that doesn't erase the past, but lets you breathe alongside it, knowing you've earned the right to rest.